Hello and welcome to Billy Watson TV. Today I am going to chat with Richard Vobes about how he got into performing at a circus and being a mime artist, writing books and television shows, and then on to interviewing many alternative thinkers for his popular YouTube channel. I hope you enjoy the show. Cheers.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Billy Watson TV. It gives me great pleasure and it's indeed an honour to chat to Mr. Richard Vobes today. How are you doing, Richard?
I'm doing very well. I almost felt I'd had to sing then because that was a very lovely intro. I don't think anyone's ever sung an intro like that for me, so that's really lovely. Thank you.
That's cool. I'm glad you liked that. I actually heard you sing on your Naked Englishman podcast.
Yes.
You sing ditties at the end of them, or?
There you go. You see, yeah, that was a little ditty that I used to make up. I used to make up little songs for the kids, and they were just very random. And then the kids would say, "Oh, sing it again, Dad." And then you're trying to remember what you just did, and then eventually, it gets into the head. So that I've got a number of those that I can sing to my kids, and they'll, even now that they're in their 30s, they'll sing back.
Right, so these are old ones you've written because you were talking to Julia and she kind of sharing them with her, and she's learning the words as well now.
Yes, I know. Well, because she's got younger kids and she was singing to them, and I said, "Oh, I bet you haven't sung these songs." And so we'd been singing them together, and yeah.
Well, quite good because I thought it was like more traditional. You'd heard them around, but it's actually interesting you're making these ones up.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I am a bit like that. I like to sort of do my own thing and take inspiration from other things. It's nice to be creative.
Yeah, well, that's what I do actually. We're quite similar in a lot of ways, and they do various different things, and just creativity is coming out of you. So, like, I'll take karaoke songs, for instance, popular songs. I'll change the lyrics to them,
right?
And then I can sing them badly myself.
Yeah. Well, it's all good fun, isn't it? I mean, why just go with what everybody else does when I think that we are very creative people, and it gets you through life. It makes life much more interesting if you've invented or created or produced something yourself rather than just sitting. It's nice to consume some stuff, of course, but it is quite good to have a go yourself.
Yeah, like I was listening to you've got a playlist about your life story. You've got various videos. And I was listening to the one about how you got into filmmaking.
Right.
I think it was a barn, and there was like a TV show, and they filmed this fire and stuff. And then you shot it in 40 stills to tell the story.
Yes, I went back. So this was when I was in my teens, early teens, like 12, 13, something like that. And at the back of my house was a derelict farm. And we used to play on there and build camps and muck about. And one day we saw this Ford Capri turn up down the little lane towards the derelict farm, and we were sort of in a field out the way, and we just watched this and we thought, I wonder what's going on here. And these two blokes jumped out, and they got into a position and had guns in their hands, and they were pointing at somebody that we couldn't see, and we thought, oh, these must be plainclothes detectives or something, because at the time you had the professionals on the telly and all of that, Bodie and Doyle, but these guys got back in the car, reversed the car up. And we thought, oh, okay, maybe they got it wrong place. But then they came back again, did exactly the same. Yeah. And they did this 3 or 4 times. And we thought, this is a bit unusual. And as we crept over towards the farm, we saw there was a camera, an old film camera. And so we went to watch. And it turns out that these were a bunch of guys who were making a sort of stunt reel to show off all the stunts that they could do to sort of get into the industry. And so they climbed over the farm, the derelict farm, and onto the roof, and they'd set up areas that they could fall through the roof into the farm buildings, landing on cardboard boxes and mattresses. And we watched all of this. And then the big stunt at the end was they made a barn look like it was on fire with special stuff around the windows and smoke machines and flames and torches and various things. And then this girl rushed out, supposedly she was set on fire, but she had a special backpack on and it was all in flames. And then these burly blokes threw blankets over to put the fire out. It was, as a sort of 12, 13-year-old, it was spectacular. It was like you stepped into the movies. But what was interesting is we noticed that they had left the cardboard boxes and the mattresses at this derelict farm. Having made the film, they obviously, didn't need them. So my mate and I came back the next day, borrowed my dad's ordinary stills camera, put in some slide film, and we made virtually the same film, apart from the fire. And I, think, thank God they didn't leave any petrol lying around.
Or matches.
Or matches, I think. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be here. And we put it back together, and we made a sort of little silly slide thing. But that's what really got me thinking. That's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted, rather than go and work for an insurance company selling insurance over the phone or whatever other options might have been available. And we're talking 1970s, sort of mid to late 70s. So
you got these stills, but how did you make it into a movie then? How did you?
Well, I also then I used to play with my dad's Grundig reel-to-reel tape recorder. So we created this narration, and my mate and I were sort of voicing it, and then we would play the over the speakers this sort of script that we made up, which I haven't got now, but it must have sounded awful. And then we would just, with my dad's projector, project it onto a screen. Nobody really said, we didn't have YouTube or anything like that, so it was like mum and dad and a few friends would come in and sort of go, "Oh yeah, very good. That's what you've been getting up to, has it? Oh my God, But we got away with it. And then I did. When I got my first job at 15 in a printing firm, with the money, I bought myself a little Super 8 cine camera. And so we would do similar, not as exciting, because we didn't really have all the stunt gear then, because the mattresses and the stuff had fallen to bits. But we did other things. But that's really how I got really going, thinking I wanted to be in the film business or entertaining or.
Because you were doing puppet shows as well, though, so the kind of two combined, maybe.
Yeah, at school, I remember we used to do these puppet shows, which again used to bore everybody else in the classroom. But that was at primary school, and it was quite good then. I think schools were a nice place to be because they were encouraging creativity. I don't feel that that's what's happening now, but we would. Say, Miss, we'd like to do a puppet show. She said, yeah, go and rehearse it in the corridor. And then, in half an hour, come back and do it. And we'd made the puppets out of papier-mâché, and we'd sort of not knitted, but sewn the little sort of skirts thing together so that we could stand up there. We had no script, rehearse in the corridor was just sort of bumming off a lesson, really. And then go back and pretend, oh, hello, how are you? Oh, I'm all right, how are you? And the rest of the kids were like, have we got to put up with this rubbish? But it's that beginnings, isn't it? It's everyone needs to start somewhere, and it gave me a huge zest to perform and make people laugh.
I think it's like a muscle, isn't it? Like creativity. If people get encouraged that young and especially, you've still got that imagination, and if you can keep that going, it's almost like keeping a childlike spirit.
Yes,
you can be creative all your life.
Absolutely, and I think that's the trouble with life, has knocked that sort of thing out of people. When you see kids now, like 3, 4, 5, they play in their imagination a lot, and they're very creative. But as they get older, you're given toys which are sort of replicas of real things, and instead of making something yourself, and a stick can become, a javelin or a sort of spear or something, or a stick in a certain shape. You can play cowboys and Indians that we used to do, would be a gun. Now you have to have the plastic replica that is the real thing. Otherwise, you're not really playing it. And that's a shame, because you're sort of curbing the imagination all the time.
I think it's even worse than that. I mean, maybe 10, 15 years ago it's like that. By these days, they'll get imagination stunted because they're all given like iPhones and whatever. Years old,
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. And they're not even running around in the forests and fields. It's all on these sort of shoot 'em up games on consoles.
And parents think it's all, I've got my eye on the children, they're safe, I know where they are, but they're not getting the chance to take risks and go out and explore the world and build their confidence up.
Exactly. You've got to fall out a few trees,
Exactly.
to realise, oh yeah, that's not, not a, you know your limits, and learning your limits is a good thing.
Yeah. just that when I first got the computer, I got Windows Movie Maker. Like I had this tartan suit from my dad, and I got a green Jimmy hat, with the ginger hair.
Right. Yes.
Called myself Hamish, and then I just took some pictures of me out in hayfields and whatever. And then I made a thing on Windows Movie Maker. That was the first time I done it with pictures,
Yeah.
And then you get the creative bug for doing things. So, to me, life without creativity is very dull because again, you're just consuming everything.
Absolutely.
You're not expressing yourself.
And at least you went out, though. That's the thing. I mean, what's fascinating now is with AI and the ability to. I saw an advert for some AI application, and you just put in the command what you want, and it does everything for you. And it's incredibly clever, but all you're doing really is just typing in, can you create a universe in which this happens and that happens, and you might modify it a bit, give this person a Scottish accent, or give this person a Welsh accent, whatever. But that's not the same as getting some cardboard boxes and some tape and building and gluing and slapping some paint on and making mistakes and things going wrong and trying it again and learning, and then having the real satisfaction of, wow, I did that.
Yeah. Well, talking about AI, the clip at the start, actually, I've got books of poetry and stuff, and in the past I've tried to play guitar. I'm not that good. I want to get into it and learn it properly, but I've never got into it, so just do cover versions, and I play them live sometimes. But I've got that much poems, and I don't really have the confidence to go and collaborate with people because I'm busy doing lots of stuff. So I've got AI software, or there's AI software online. You can I've just typed in my poem, or like that intro to you,
right?
Type in the song, and then boof, that comes out. And you're right; it's almost like too convenient,
Yeah, it's so quick, isn't it?
It's incredible. It's mind blowing.
But the sad thing is, it for me, it just means that people won't try to do the real. I mean, it's different if you've got guests on like you're doing, and it becomes much more a sort of professional thing, and you're doing, that's different. But if you're young and you just can do things like that, you never learn how to pick up an instrument, learn the finger patterns, the whole strumming thing, or the piano, or any of it. You just go like this. I mean, we know it's going to be taking away people's jobs. That's the thing, if we allow it.
Yeah, it's quite frustrating because my son, he got into guitar because I was encouraging him, and he was going for lessons with a good guitar player, and said, oh, he's really good. And then he got something that my mother bought him, a good laptop, and then the guitar sat in the corner because it's just on the computer. Now he's just typing in, almost like it's a visual thing, just typing that, and he's creating these beats that the young ones are into these days. But I'm saying, well, you should keep the guitar going, because then that's a skill you can take anywhere and play in bars or whatever. But that's just been up,
Yes, I mean, I remember I worked in a sound studio for a while, and they had this new digital, or I guess it was digital back then. It was called a Lindrum computer, and it was a console thing, and you could program the drumming. But the point was, you use that as your backing, or your metronome effectively, and then you would play the instruments over that. Well, at least it's like playing a backing tape, isn't it? And playing over the top of that. I think that's great because that's still creative and you're actually concentrating on whatever the instrument is. But when it's everything and all you're doing is tapping on a keyboard, a quirky keyboard, then you
become a computer programmer rather than
exactly.
Yeah,
and that seems to be what they point people to, isn't it? Become learn code, be a computer programmer seems to be the thing that they push everybody into, and rather than actually picking up a real instrument, or even film editing and everything's all done for you now.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, do you think humanity is like devolving because of technology?
That is the real worry. Although the optimistic side, I mean, I do try to sort of stay as optimistic as ever. I mean, one thing I've noticed, there's so many YouTube videos that it's pretty much all generated on AI. Someone's got an idea, here, write a script, tells AI, write a script about this subject. A script pops out. Okay, find me the video source material, and record a voiceover, and you leave it to do its thing. Bang, up comes a video, and you press, and it goes up. And because there's so many of that, I think that what you're doing, what I'm doing, where actually we're making an effort, I think people in time will tire of the synthetic
I
version.
hate them so much when you see the thing,
just
you're clipping
switch
it,
them
and
off
oh
now.
God, it's another one of them, you know?
Yeah. So I do think people will tire of that, and they'll want real people who are a bit quirky and a bit, not so polished or slick, and will gravitate, because I think souls will gravitate to souls, and it's fascinating to watch the sort of synthetic digital world for a bit. And I've been watching a couple of these what do you call them, satire takes of films where they, there's a few comedy ones, a Doctor Who piss take and various, but after a while I started to think, actually it's not very funny anymore. It's just, anyone could do that. You just type in the thing. I want to see actors and actresses, whether famous or not famous, but people doing their thing in real life.
What do you think of even like television? I know you worked in television. You've done a very quirky thing. Was it Snug and Cozy?
Yes.
And that's mental. I don't know, people
filmed in Scotland as well, actually.
Yeah, from STV. But what I'm saying is these type of things aren't really coming out. Like you used to have the classic Porridge or Fawlty Towers and really good screen plays, television shows. But these days everything's bland because you can't offend anyone. So things like Rise and Damp and these classic comedies and Alf Garnett are considered offensive, but actually we were laughing kind of at them and they're saying, they've taken it completely out of context and looking at, things like Love Thy Neighbor back in the day, in the sort of, again, in the 70s, was not laughing at a different type of people, but they're laughing at a section of society whose attitudes were not accepting it, and we were really laughing at that. But people think, no, that's it's a racist comedy. Yeah, they're sanitizing everything, so no real creativity is allowed on TV. And then when you try and do, I've tried stand-up comedy. I'm barred from most everywhere really in Scotland.
That's because you're probably funny.
Well, come on trumpet, but when I do like uncensored gigs with Katie Hopkins and stuff, and people really love it. Yeah. And then I feel free to be myself there.
Absolutely.
And cross the line, and say things you're not supposed to, get a reaction and then get a laugh from that, because that's building attention. But any form of tension in the real world, people are like, oh my God, can't take this. We've been programmed not to take tension, and it's just very difficult.
Very difficult.
Not just the promoters not letting you do it, but also the audience themselves have been programmed.
And that's really strange, because if it's a comedy club and it's going to be comedy, then comedy should be you should be able to question or challenge people using comedy. But it's like, oh, hang on, you said something, then no, that's not right. It's like, hang on, you're taking it seriously. This is comedy. We have fun. I'll take the piss out of myself, and I might take the piss about general things. It's not to you personally to be offended, but if you are offended, that's you being offended. I'm not deliberately setting out to offend you, but people get so offended very quickly.
Yeah, I've interviewed Steve Hughes, and he's got a famous bit where he basically says, you were offended. Yeah, so what? I mean, you didn't wake up in the morning and say, I saw the comedian last night, I was offended, and now I've got leprosy.
Yeah.
It's just subjective, and Ricky Gervais is speaking out quite a lot about that as well. And even John Cleese and stuff, just how, you can't do it, but they're the point, you just keep doing your thing, and again, you'll find your right audience for sticking to your principles, I think.
And it is funny. I mean, as you talk about finding your own audience, and you hope that your own audience will come along. And so I do my YouTube channel, but I know that there are people who come in deliberately to hate watch.
Yeah.
And you think, well, there are so many YouTube channels to go and look at. There must be something that's right up your alley, rather than going at the ones that you can't bear to watch. And yet they deliberately come along to, oh, yes, I'm offended by that. Right, I can write that in the comments. You just think, my God, what kind of world are we living in?
Yeah, get a life, mate,
Yeah.
Like I've watched lots of, I get not offended, but there's lots of stuff I don't particularly like. I mean, somebody threw me off the stage last week, a few weeks ago now, but basically his set before me, he was talking about germ theory, and he was like really endorsing it and going heavy, and like I was like totally disagreeing with everything he was saying, but I went on and done my thing. But because I never actually said the N word, I actually said literally the N word.
Right.
That's literally what I said. and because I said the N word, he stopped my show and told me to get off the stage. You know, and I was just like, what's going on here? It's these people are taking over, and it's the minority who shout the loudest. Then they seem to get their way.
Yes,
You know,
I don't understand how everyone else has taken a lot of what a lot of minorities, the extreme minorities, have taken seriously, you know, and everybody else seems to sort of go, oh yeah, we mustn't offend them. And you go, look, I have no problem with them and having their own opinions, but their opinions are their opinions, and we can listen to them and go, okay, that's your opinion. I disagree necessarily, or partly agree, or partly disagree, but my opinion also is valid. Thank you very much. And suddenly, but everybody's like too scared to criticize it, even though I believe in their heart of hearts, they're actually going, no, that's not right. But I'm too scared to say it because I'll get cancelled.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely an air of that. And again, you think a lot of people are like yourself with a unique perspective, but I'm thinking a lot of people these days are just kind of matrix programs, you know.
Yeah.
Literally what the news says or the thing tells them to think that's literally what's going on inside their head, and that's what we're up against.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, people have been so dumbed down, or the NLP of television, and you know, you used to say to them, "We should stop watching that thing." They said, "What do you mean? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" They can't, you know, got no concept that they are being influenced hugely.
Yeah, watching the news, it's like getting Bill Hicks said, getting a big bit of black paint and painting over your third eye. You know?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you know, have you always been? I know you say when you were younger, you were a bit of an outsider and a loner. I think that kind of lends itself to thinking outside the box.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I can't account for why I think the way I think, but I never felt part of school. You know, the kids would do the sports, or they'd be this, and I always felt, no, I'm not really interested in all of that. I mean, I was into my filmmaking and stuff, and drama, and theatre, and all of that, and yet for some reason I didn't find a niche. Whereas sometimes, if you say we're good at impressions and could take the piss out of the teachers, or you could, I interviewed Bob Moran the other day, cartoonist, and when he was at school, he was able to draw the teachers in a sort of comic way. So you had all the kids on your side because you were taking the piss out of the authority at school. And some teachers would look at the pictures and laugh because they were very good. But if you can't find that thing that unites you, even though you're different with everybody else, then you are a bit of a loner, aren't you? And you take the knock. So I was bullied because people didn't understand me. I wasn't conforming. I didn't want to do what wasn't interrupting what they wanted to. I just didn't want to do what they did. And so they felt a bit, I don't know whether they felt threatened, but they just thought, well, we'll pick on him.
I think there is a bit of that they don't understand you, so therefore the gang up on you.
Yeah,
is because of that element of being different. Like I got that when I first kind of woke up and started talking about 9/11 being a lie or Diana was murdered or whatever, and then all of a sudden people who thought we were friends is just like you're number one. When you were kind of 20 years old, you were writing scripts and stuff and hoping to get them.
Yeah.
So what kind of happened, like 15, 16, going on to that, and you got into mime? What was your, you said about this film that you made. What was the next steps after that to get you more creative and going into the circus performer and stuff?
Yeah, so I left school at 15, and the careers teacher, who up until the week that he was a careers teacher had always been a science teacher, but suddenly now he was the careers teacher, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd like to be an actor or a film director, please." Yeah. And he rattled in his little index box and said, "Oh, there's a job in the Carfax." I lived in a place called Horsham. He says, "There's a job in the Carfax as a printer." And my first thought was, okay, you're not going to help me get into being films and stuff, but I could earn some money to buy my own films. That was like my independent mind already working. So I managed to get this job, and that's what I started to do. But then I realized if I stay in this job, I'm just going to be a printer. That's all I'm ever going to do. And I knew, and I did it for 2.5 years, and we were making our own homemade films. And then an opportunity came to work in a sound studio, only because these two guys who worked in the sound studio came in to have their printing done. And so I was like, oh, yeah, what's the sound studio? And I thought that's a lot more exciting than sitting here printing stuff. So they had an opportunity, and I was just as a tape op. So I was operating, lacing up in the old days, the analog tape recorders and things like that. And at the same time, I was doing amateur dramatics. So I was sort of getting into that and was going on these courses in the county. And there was a mime guy, a Czechoslovakian mime artist who was coming, and I thought that was quite good. And he was doing all this sort of the wall and walking on the spot and all that. And I thought, well, that's yeah, still got all of that. I thought that was quite, it was a bit different because all the students on these courses were all wanting to go to RADA and all this sort of stuff, and they were so affected by "Oh Hello Lovey" and all of this.
No good,
and I thought, bloody hell, I don't want to go to a place that's full of those lot. Whereas the mime stuff seemed to be very down to earth, and I'd always sort of been a bit down to earth. So
it's a good piss taker. The mime artists can take the piss out of you quite well.
Exactly, yeah. And so again, it's that sort of taking a piss. So I did actually go to. In the end, I was encouraged to, did you want to go to mime school? And I thought, yeah, that sounds quite. It was only like 3 months, but I loved it so much. I did it 3 times. They did the same course twice, and then an advanced course. So I did, and then there I met people who were juggling and unicycling, and so I was like really hungry to learn all those sort of skills, which then led me to get into the sort of corporate entertainment and family entertainment, which then started to do these gala shows and evening shows and street theatre, and I was sort of honing my skills. So I would go out on the street and do because if I was a bit desperate for money, which was pretty much all the time, I would go and do some street theatre and do a bit of mime, bit of robotics and juggling and anything like that.
Did you do fire eating and lying in a bed of nails?
Yeah, that's it. Fire eating, bed of nails, all of that.
A bit daunting the first time you put fire into
it's funny because I would do that. I would do all the fire stuff, apart from blowing the big flames.
Right.
And a local school, through these courses I did, the guy said, "Oh, would you come and just show us your fire eating and stuff in the class and teach the kids to juggle?" So I went to this school and they was, and said, "Do us?" And they said, "Oh, I understand you do the fire breathing." Well, I made the mistake of lying and said, yeah, no, of course I could, because I thought I can't do this in the classroom. They'll never ask me. Right. And he said, "We could do it outside. Would you give us a demonstration?" I said, "Oh no." I said, "But I haven't got the necessary. I had not all the stuff." He said, "Well, we can get some paraffin from the workshop, and you could make up one of your firebrands," because I told them how you do it. So I went outside with these kids, and they're all like out there, and I think, "Oh crikey, I've got to now look like I know what I'm doing." And I knew the principle, so I demonstrated the fire eating bit and the rolling up your arms and all of this, but I'd never done the blowing. But I knew you had a mouthful of paraffin and you would spray this out. So I got the kids to say, "Right, okay, stand over there and I'll show you how this is done. Don't do this at home, blah blah blah." And I took a mouthful of the paraffin and I had my fire brand in front of me, and I sprayed it out, and this enormous flame was there in front of me, which was fantastic. Except I made one vital error, is the wind was coming this way. So I blew this thing and it came straight back, burnt all my eyebrows, and I had a little bit of hair, took off a bit of hair, and there was all this singeing stuff. And because the teacher looked horrified, the kids were like laughing, and I had the presence of mind to say, and I did that deliberately to show you just how dangerous it is, because you should be doing it that way. And of course, I learned that very lesson. And they all went, "Oh, that's very clever," and I got away with it.
Your eyebrows completely gone?
Yeah, well, not completely, but the smell of singeing hair, which just stayed with me. But thereafter, of course, it was in the act. So then I would do all the fire breathing, and it was relatively. And of course, I always
you done it downwind and
always knew which way the wind was going. Absolutely, but yeah.
And you also done standing on a ball and juggling 5.
Yeah, so
things.
you could buy these big, and I suppose you can still get them, these walking globes, they called them. And I would balance on this walking globe, which looks easier than it is. And then I was juggling 5 balls.
I mean, that's quite a skill to
And
develop.
absolutely. I mean, it took ages to learn how to do all this. I can't do it now because I've lost my left eye, and it's a
That's how the old circus act kind of stopped, because you had contact lenses and you never changed them.
Yeah, I was on a gig on the Isle of Wight, and I forgot to take the fluid that you put them in overnight. There's a little solution, so I put them in water, and the water can have a bug called acanthamoeba in, and it got into the contact lens, and then it was on my eye, and the bug dug into my cornea, and it was very sore.
It sounds horrendous. There's a video you're talking about it in the playlist where it said you're getting your cornea stapled in 3 times and stuff like that.
Yeah, they stitch it in, yeah, it's extremely painful. And of course, the body is trying to reject the cornea because they'd taken the other cornea out, and this bug hadn't gone. It kept it going into, and I had that 3 times with the cornea. So, and then I got sclerosis, I think it was. The whole white of the eye went bright red, and for 9 weeks I was just migraines, headaches, couldn't bear any light or anything, and in the end I just pleaded with the surgeon, to take the eye out, because I got very suicidal at that point, and they agreed, and they took the eye out, and I had a prosthetic a prosthetic eye, and of course I've never looked back, quite literally, with that eye. But and I do. There was nothing they could do. They said they could save it, but it would always look very strange. And now I get away with it. People think, oh, you've got a lazy eye, or one eye's just a bit, wonky or whatever. But
that went on for 4 years, so you couldn't perform during that time. And
no, I had to give that up. And so I used to wear an eye patch. But I got into the filming, and by luck, somebody asked me to make a couple of corporate videos, because they knew I was still into the filming. And so that I was earning a living doing corporate videos. And once I sort of got on the roll, and of course, my early experiences on making video Super 8 stuff had done me really well. So I was able to be behind the camera, and people would say, because I put a patch on the glasses, and they would say, "Is that the director's look?" Yeah. So that you can look down the lens. And I just went with it. I said, "Yeah, that's exactly why I've got it." Because otherwise you've got to tell the whole story time and time again.
Which is why you made the video, so people can watch that.
Yes, because they'd always say, "Oh, I hear you've lost your eye. How did it happen?" There's a video about it.
Yeah, so that kind of got you into the filmmaking side of things. Were you still writing? Because you've wrote some other things. You wrote books, Splidge. You wrote a book which is for children.
Yes, I was originally I was writing TV scripts that I thought would be great. And at 18, I wrote this TV adventure, because I was aware that a lot of TV stuff was very curtailed and seemed, because I was young and I was ignorant, didn't seem like they would spend any money on it. And I thought, but we all like the big films. Why don't they make much more adventurous things? So I wrote this 6-part, very adventurous story with double-decker buses and things going off cliffs and all sorts of, nonsense.
Sounds like the young ones.
Yeah. And I sent it off to a number of places, and Yorkshire Television got in touch with me, and they said, look, you're obviously very keen, but you don't understand how TV works. So they invited me up. So as an 18-year-old, I went up to Leeds, to Yorkshire Television, and they showed me, they said, come and watch us film a typical TV thing, which was a studio-based thing. And it had 6 sets in the studio, and it was all dialogue-led rather than action. Whereas I was thinking feature film in sort of parts. So
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. Exactly, that sort of stuff. So they said, so I went away from that learning how to, but I thought, but that's why it's so damn dull, because I wanted more stuff. And then I used to watch the Chuckle Brothers.
Really?
And they were 2 old guys who they would sort of fall over, but you'd never really see them do the stunt. And I thought, you're cheating the children. So I came up with this idea of Snug and Cozy, which was effectively Laurel and Hardy in spacesuits.
Yeah.
That's how I sold the idea. And we did the stunts. So I wrote in loads of stunts. And of course, they say, no, you can't do that. And you can't do that, when we eventually sold it. And we had one stunt that was these two aliens are hiding in I won't tell you why, because it's all convoluted, but they were hiding in a removal truck. And the removal truck is moving furniture into a new house. So there they are. And we hid in this double bed. And the double bed comes out of the removal truck, goes down a hill. Oh, and we're on the bed going, oh.
It's like Frank Spencer done a bit of
Yeah,
that.
like a Frank Spencer thing. And it ends up in a car wash.
Right.
And the car wash comes to life and we get covered in soap suds. And I thought that would, give kids a laugh. Well, when we were invited up to because I was sort of an associate producer on this, an unpaid part, they said, well, we want to show you all the locations. So I said, oh, that's great. So we went to this car wash and they said, this is where the bed will end up. And they said, but obviously we can't put the the bed in the car wash because it'd be too dangerous with you on the bed. And I said, what do you mean? Why would it be dangerous? They said, well, with the rolling things and all of that. So we've worked out, if we take the bed and we stop it just before, and on a long lens we film, it might look like it's in the car wash. And I wasn't having any of this. I said to the guy whose garage it was, I said, can you start the car wash up just so I can have a look? And I was in plain clothes, we were just sort of looking at the locations. And he started this up, and I just walked into the car wash.
Right.
Just walked into, because it's doing all this up and down and things coming in.
Right.
And it, I mean, unless you get somehow caught up into it, just whips around, but it's not really painful or anything. And they looked at me as if I was some idiot because I got soaked. But I said, it's not dangerous. We've got to take the bed. This is where the gag is, that the kids will laugh and all the foam and all of that. So they didn't like me because I was making them work harder. I said, no, you've got to do it properly.
Well, Buster Keaton done lots of his own stunts.
Yeah. So then when it came to the bed bit and we were actually filming, they were saying, oh, well, we can't really let you go down the hill on your own because how will we stop the bed? It's like, you're TV, aren't you? You do this all the time, don't you? So I said, well, we'll put a bale of straw down there or some crash mats and we'll go. They said, well, you'll get hurt falling off. I said, don't worry about us. We'll be okay. We're in these comedy spacesuits, which were padded anyway. So I said, we can pad up a bit more on the inside for that stunt. And they were like, oh, I don't know about this. And it was like, oh my God, and we managed to get a bit of that in. But they were just so.
So how many of them did you make?
We made 6 in the first series, and then we got recommissioned, and we made another 10. Right. And we needed the third series to sort of put us on the map. And we didn't get the third series not because of us. And I'm convinced it was nothing to do with us. There was a political bit of shenanigans going on in the executive suite because they employed somebody from TVS back in the day. And he came with a whole load of programs, titles that he took from TVS to give to Scottish Television. Scottish Television then sacked him, but kept those programs. And that individual eventually ended up being the controller of kids' programs. And when the commission came to take a certain amount of programs from Scottish Television, he took none other than How To, because that was too big to refuse. But all the other programs, which we were one of, none of them got recommissioned. And that was a sort of vendetta against, because they'd taken, and it was their own bloody fault, but we were cast out from that. And so, but at the same time, I realized just how narcissistic the TV people were and backstabbing. And although I tried to sort of sell some other ideas to television, I made some pilots and various other things off my own back. In the end, when YouTube was just sort of able to get audiences having a bit more longer than Charlie Bit My Finger or Fenton, these sort of, reaction or comic videos, I thought there's a chance here of going straight to the audience and doing what I wanted to do. Only I didn't have the same sort of budget. So that was the only thing.
What was that? What did you start doing then?
That's when I started doing my Bald Explorer stuff. And I thought, actually, England is such a lovely place. And Sussex, where I was, I started in that area. But this country and all our history. So I thought I'll do country walks and try and talk a bit about the history and show people how lovely it is. Sadly, of course, we've seen the uglification of the country with everything becoming very bland and built on and all of that, which now I rail against slightly differently.
Yeah, because I'm again quite similar. I moved to Turkey in 2006 and I've seen the region and I wanted to showcase that
Right.
To people in the UK to say there's more here than just the beach, you know?
Yes.
But I think your productions, probably with your training that you had, you're quite professional in the making of it. You know, you'll interview somebody that you probably set all the scenes up. I'm just a guy with a camera walking down, you know, dodgy thing. But just the idea of letting people, you're interested in something, so you want to share that interest in the beauty of your surroundings to others. So tell us a little bit about the Bald Explorer then. What kind of places have you been to and what's your most interesting kind of shows that you've done?
Well, when I first started it, of course, I was emulating television because I'd had this background in television, and I thought, well, that would be the way to get an audience. So I spent 3 months putting together sort of a 30-minute documentary, and the first one was, it was about one particular town nearby that had a whole load of different aspects to it. So I wanted to show that off, and I would read up about the history. I would write a script, and then I went there, and I knew it was only going to be me and another person who was going to help me film. But I was going, right, okay, where are the aeroplanes in the sky? Making too much noise to stop you from filming. Where are the nearest public conveniences? Because if we're filming, we need to know. Where can we go and get something to eat? So I was doing all the sort of recce that a location manager would do.
Yeah.
Spending ages doing all of this stuff and going, right, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we'll do that. And then planning out a schedule and making the appointments with the people we were going to interview and all of this sort of stuff. And because I was doing some corporate videos, so I was taking that sort of very professional approach. And I put the first video up on YouTube, and I think about 5 people watched it.
Right.
And I thought, hang on a minute. And I was watching other YouTubers at the time, and they were just doing locked off camera, talking to the camera, and were getting loads of views. And because they were doing loads of videos. Mm-hmm. And I thought, it's taken me 3 months to do this. And I did this over 2 years. And I eventually ended up with 6 episodes of this thing that nobody was watching. And I thought, there's got to be, I'm not doing this right, am I? And then I realized, actually, all that initially, that a professional approach is not what people wanted. They wanted regular content, and it didn't matter whether it was shaky vision or not. They just wanted to check in, and they liked the rough edges.
Yeah, like Masha.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And it was like, at first I was really resentful. It's like, some people are just picking up the camera and just filming it. And I was spending all this time trying to get it really nice, not realizing that was not what was the...
I'm sure there was a market. I mean, probably if you took it to like a satellite channel or something like that, you know.
Yes.
I
kind of just missed the period where the satellite channels would maybe open to more lesser known production companies with no budget, you know, and would take 3 months to make one episode. You know, they probably would like all episodes made within 3 months so that they could air them. So, but I changed it differently. I bought a GoPro, and at the time GoPros didn't have stabilization in it. So I bought a gimbal, I put a GoPro on the gimbal, and you basically got a shot of me and one way and a shot of where I was walking, like the one person walking thing. Yeah. And I was able to sort of do that every day. So I started to write, okay, let's forget the script. Let's not worry about anything. We'll just put a microphone plugged into the camera, and I'll just go walking and I'll go talking. And I realized then I knew nothing really about the countryside. So then I was reading about the countryside, and I knew, you know, I was walking along going, oh, look at that lovely tree. And I thought, oh, well, this is no good because there's another lovely tree there. I can't keep calling them lovely trees. I need to name what they are. So what is that? So I learned then that's an oak, that's an elm, that's an ash. And then I felt, oh, I can tell people how to recognize those things. So I used I was grabbing every bit of knowledge. And same if I went into a church, to go, right, okay, that's the font. I know that bit. That's the altar. Then I started to realize how you could decode the church. But I didn't want to sort of spend too much time on a church because I thought, well, how many people are interested? But it was part of the production. And then I did start to add a bit more. Once I'd started to build the audience, I realized I could get establishing shots and walking shots. So I upped the game slowly.
Yeah, and you've still got that going, your Bold Explorer.
I don't do it at the moment. They're all there to look at because eventually I sort of did lots of places in Sussex, and then we would go further afield. We went to the Peak District, we went up to Cumbria, we went into Norfolk, and we went into Wiltshire and a few places. And we did a little bit in Scotland. And of course, there's so many places to go to, but you need a bit of a budget.
Yeah.
And then, of course, people in vans, you've got van life, and the van lifers were traveling, doing that naturally, of turning up somewhere and showing off this wonderful landscape, taking their drones out. And I was like, curses, people are already doing this. How do you? So then I thought, I did buy a van, and that was the intention to do some of that. But we got going on a bit of that, and then I sort of fell into this. I suppose this conspiratorial exposition, which brought me a huger audience than ever before. And a lot of it was just locked off, sitting in my downstairs front room, asking why the kind, nice, benevolent government were trying to murder us. And that resonated with so many people. And I went down the rabbit hole. And then I've started to use this studio, which actually we were doing comedy shows in originally. And that's when I started to use the bits and pieces that I'd built for this comedy show to interview the guests. So everything sort of morphed and just became at the right time, the right thing.
Yeah, I can remember. It was about 3 years or something you've been doing that, because I can kind of remember you, as you say, you were just questioning stuff to begin with.
Yeah, because I was very much learning. It was a huge opening. I mean, I had this feeling that things weren't right, but
you weren't so much awake then before you were.
No, I just instinctively knew things like the COVID thing. I didn't want to get involved with that. I knew global warming was a bit of a myth, and I just thought all this will blow over, but it didn't feel right. And then once I started talking about it, people were sending me down the rabbit holes, and I was like really learning what was going on. And at first it was like very hard to accept all of that because it's a complete mind changer. Yeah. But so many people were sending me on to very related things. And I thought, no, this is right. This is true. And then you're feeling really low because you just thought, well, they've got it all sewn up. We're all going to die in a horrible, agonizing death. And that's it. What's the point? You're getting like, what was everything for? And then you rise out of that and you think, right, well, no, I'm going to push back. I'm going to try and wake other people. I'll try and talk as eloquently as I can, and try and just carry on the questioning, but where I've learned, share some of that. And the channel just kept growing and growing and growing, and until you get your first strike. Where YouTube go,
I'm shadow banned and strike to death.
Yes. Yes. Well, I am now, I'm still hanging in there on YouTube, but whereas I would get 50,000 views or 80 or 100, now it's sort of like 10 is a good average. If I'm lucky, sometimes it's only 3 or 4. And you think, hang on a minute, I've got nearly 250,000 subscribers and 3,000 people are watching.
Yeah, first of all, are the numbers right? Or secondly, are shadow banning you? One of the two or both.
Yeah, and you really, after having 4 strikes and demonetized, now they say, oh no, it's it's what's the term that they use? It's
Misinformation.
not just misinformation, but it's something like, so I can't remember the exact term. It's like dodgy content, harmful content, harmful. And you think, so you can't have adverts, but they're quite happy for you to keep the channel going if it's harmful, which is, it's like, well, that's a bit weird, isn't it? So they must be making money out of it somewhere. They're making money, but I'm not allowed to.
I mean, it's absolutely shocking. Obviously, YouTube was started apparently by two guys and was taken over by Google, and you know, it's very nefarious, and you can't really get very much good content. But I certainly would still recommend your channel because the quality of guests you get on, again, probably because you've built up an audience, and one person maybe organically is leading you to somebody else, and somebody will contact you, and it's really important information that you are sharing. Are you? Like when I was getting guests, I always like to kind of research a bit of them and stuff, but it can be quite hard when you've got so many guests coming and so many different topics. So how do you manage that?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I don't. I have I get an email from somebody who either recommends someone, says, "Oh, you know, have you seen so and so? Get them on," or they come forward and say, "I've got this information. I'd love to come on your channel." And fairly early on, it was, you know, I was trying to sort of get guests, so I was just going, "Yeah, come on the channel." It's not live, so I would do the interview, and if it really was awful, and to be honest, I think I've only had that 3 times where it was so awful I couldn't put it out.
Right. What was awful about it?
Well, the one guy, I mean, bless him, he was a nice guy, and we were talking about. He said he wanted to come on because he could talk about money and how important it was, and he understood about cash and all of this. And at that time, we were being threatened. You know, it was the beginning of the threatening of the digital ID, the CBDCs.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you know, keep cash alive and all of this sort of stuff. So I got him on, and I asked him. I said, "Why do you then think people are really trying to hold on to cash? What does that represent in somebody's life?" And he said, "Oh, I think it's a fad at the moment."
Right, okay.
And I thought, what? And I suddenly realized he knew nothing of what he just sort of had some ideas, but not really anything. And I thought, 2 things are going to happen here. If I put this on, he's going to get slated, and also I should get slated, and it will, you know, damage both of us. So we carried on with the interview because I didn't have the heart to stop him there and then. I let him have, you know, do the interview, and then I emailed him the following morning and I said, "Thanks ever so much for coming on the show. It was really nice to talk to you, but I just don't feel that it was strong enough to go out for the audience." And I, you know, and he was fine, actually. He was fine about it. He did say, "Oh no, well maybe I can do a talk on something else." And I was thinking, yeah, maybe.
Start up your own YouTube channel.
So there were a couple that were like that. I mean, I had another lady who couldn't stop talking and kept name dropping people, and I thought, I can't put this out. It's going to be lawsuits going on,
right?
Because she was defaming them and mentioning names, and she didn't really kind of appreciate. I mean, she was in a difficult situation, and she wanted loads of conversations before how we're going to do it and all of this. And I was trying to explain her how I operate. But when she got on, and I would ask her the first question, she would talk for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would try and sort of stop her. But and I realized after that, she'd mentioned too many names. How was I going to afterwards edit it if I was going to? And I try not to edit them because I wanted them to look genuine.
Yeah.
And not manipulated in any way. And I thought, oh, this isn't. So again, I just let her do the hour. I just sat there nodding away, do the hour.
Doing that myself.
And that's it. You know, we're very good nodders, aren't we?
Yeah.
Going, oh yeah, that's interesting. And then at the end of it, I said, "Great, thanks very much. I don't know when it will go up. I'll be in touch." And then again, I just said to, and she was gutted. She said, "Oh, can you not do this? And can you?" And I could have lied and said, "Oh, it didn't save," but I don't like to lie like that. I just said, "Look, I'll just tell you straight. Actually," but I gave her some advice. I said, I think your story is worth telling, but I think you should get together with a film, an independent, small independent company or a one-man band, and make it into a documentary, because there's so much in it that just telling it as a podcast scenario it didn't really work, and so I put it over that way. And actually, that was the genuine advice, really, because she could have turned that into, because a filmmaker could have stopped and shown and built it up rather than her going yak 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 and people just switching off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one or two that went a bit awry, but in the main, I'm actually quite very impressed with your interview skills as well. Was that just natural?
Well, I don't really do much. I mean, that seems to be the skill, is to let people talk and not interrupt them. And occasionally I do interrupt. I only really interrupt if I don't understand, or I feel the audience need a bit more explanation. And that's really all I do. So, I mean, people have been very kind about that, but mostly it's, of course, when they dry, they come to the end of something. I mean, you're very good. I'll come to the end of something and you'll pick up and keep it going. That's the only, and that I think is, that's the sort of showman stuff from entertainment background, I think, that we both share.
Because I have interrupted people now and again. I try not to, but I find that nothing's more frustrating when somebody's trying to say something.
Yeah.
And they get cut off in the middle of that thing. You're just saying, we're going to get to something, and poof, they're cut off and they didn't get back to it.
Yes.
So you want the person to finish their thought.
Absolutely. And I do. On some people, I have done it who I know, and I know they're rambling, and I know what they've got to say is good, and they're not getting to it. That's where and then of course I get slated in the comments, say, Richard, you kept interrupting. And I think to myself, yeah, I know I did, because the thing he wanted to say came out at the end of the video. Most people have switched off by then, and that's where it's a bit frustrating. Yeah. But the thing I don't overly like is those interviews in which someone's got a set of questions and they just ask a question and it's not a conversation. It doesn't feel natural. So our conversation feels very natural.
Yeah. I do have points down here, but I don't like to pre-prepare questions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas sometimes I've been interviewed, or you watch somebody else's interview and they just go, so how did you get into such and such? And somebody answers and they go, right. Yeah. And then they go straight to and it's like an interrogation then. So how did you get into what you're doing, Mr. Farr?
So what is there any particular guests that have stood out from your time, and what have you learned most? What thing do you think, like, obviously you've got Pete Sovereign's kind of what the law is and taking the law to your hands. You had William Katie, he was very good with the Magna Carta type stuff, and there's all different things with the law and council tax. And then, is there any in particular that stood out for you?
Well, we certainly did a lot. Have done over the last 2 years. The learning of the law, the lawful stuff, was for me was really fascinating and seemed one of those things that people could actually utilize.
Yeah.
Whereas I suppose the more bizarre was a lady I had on who was channeling aliens live on the show, or in the live as it was being recorded, and that was very difficult to sort of know whether that was just staged or not staged. And I had no reason to doubt what she believed she was doing, but I don't know. But I was open-minded enough to we'll put it on the show, and there are people that do this, and I don't know, but I'm not going to go in there and say, well, are you sure it's real? How do you know? I mean, I would just take the stance. So that stood out as being a difficult one for me, and I haven't really pursued that in the show. But the lawful stuff, I think the thing that I learned most of all is about the capitalization of the name, the birth certificate, and the fraud of council tax and the government frauds in all sorts of things. Money creation was another one, which, of course, you suddenly think, what are we doing with these bits of paper that you're handing to someone? It has no value.
Exactly.
And yet they have complete confidence in it.
Yeah.
But if I print one myself, they won't accept it. And yet there's no real difference. And you just think, well, that's really strange.
Because obviously gold coins in the past, they had inherent value.
Yeah.
And even the notes would have a gold strip in them.
That's right. And you think, when did that? And it's, you learn these things and you go, gosh, yeah, when did they take the strip out? Because these things are so subtle, aren't they? They just, we've redesigned the note and now it's in polymer and all of this. And you think, yeah, okay. But
we had the Bradbury pound. You've done a show on that, whereas that worked quite well.
Yeah. And some people, I mean, what's fascinating in all these different subjects, the people who can't get their head round the ideas, and I've sort of understood these things, and I thought, well, the audience must, if I can understand it, surely the audience are more intelligent than I am. But some people still struggle with some of these things. So you get people back and they'd say, I need to do it again. And I realized, of course, it is that sort of drip feed. You constantly have to go over the same old ground, because that's what they do with adverts and all the agenda. They're constantly reinforcing, using the hypnotic techniques. And
you've done a bit of hypnotism yourself in the past as well. So
yes, well, my dad, funnily enough, my dad used to do a bit of hypnosis when he was in the RAF. He was only in the RAF when he was doing national service. So when did he do that? I suppose in the early 50s, I think national service was still a thing. So he went into the RAF for 2 years doing his national service, and he'd been interested in hypnosis. So he was doing a bit of that. He tried it on me when I was a youngster, and it didn't really work because I was too analytical. I was too busy going, am I supposed to be hypnotized now? What's supposed to, I was too busy asking all these. No, shut up, Richard. Just, relax, look into my eyes, all this. And then later on, I got interested, and I did do a bit when I was in my 20s. And I found that I could do it. But better than that, I could look at people and know who was susceptible and who wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would experiment with these people. I can't do that now because I don't do the hypnosis. So I kind of lost that. It was like a second sight. You could just look at something about them. You go, oh yeah, you're very susceptible. And then I would get that person and give it a whirl, and you're not. But yeah, that was very interesting. So when you look back at all the things that you do, filmmaking, bit of hypnosis here, entertainment, and then we're going through all the crisis that we're going through, and you realize all these skills seem to have been put into my life for me to utilize now, or to see through the nonsense.
And you understand NLP as well, how they use language.
Yeah,
and it's all so subliminal and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And mostly I've only touched the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But there's enough of a grounding to start to see it when it's being utilized.
And have you started implementing these things with the council and
yes,
bills and stuff like that? Because that's the steps I'm on just now, and it can be quite daunting because there is a lot to take on.
Yes. So I was, because the first year I would have people like Pete Stone on and various other sovereign, truthful people or lawful people. And then I would get people in the comments or people emailing me, well, are you stopping your council tax, Richard? Are you doing it? You haven't told us. Are you doing it? And I thought, well, I'm already paying. So that last year I was paying because I thought, well, I'll get to the end of that. Then in March this year, I'll try challenging it, because I didn't want to do it until I got to the beginning of a year, because I thought, well, I've half paid, and by actually paying, have you started to paying, have you contracted in a way, would that be harder? So I thought, no,
people are claiming a refund from it as well.
Yeah. So I have
like direct debit. It's like you can see you paid an error, then they have to give you the money back, and you're opening up a whole can of worms. So you have to be brave, I think.
Absolutely. And it's not easy. So certain guests would come in. So what I tended to do was to try these things, but not say it on the channel, because what I didn't want to do was to encourage other people to do something that I couldn't definitively say myself worked. Mm-hmm. And then I paid a water bill using the bill of exchange that one of my guests had. Mm-hmm. And I used my signature and I signed the little chitty or the sort of check and said, yeah, I approve this instead of paying it off. Mm-hmm. Sent it off, and I didn't hear anything for 3 months. And then I got another bill, and on that bill it showed a statement of the last couple of bills that were paid. And sure enough, that one I signed with my signature, which was about 300 quid, was paid off. And I thought, this bloody works. So I made a video called It Bloody Works. Right. And I explained what I did, because I thought, now I've proved it, I can share that with people. and of course it backfired a bit, because what happened was everybody watching the video went, oh well, Vobe says it works, and they all started to do it, and I was doing it on that bill, and of course they came back and said, no, we can't accept this. And I started to get all this sort of pushback then. And I thought, yes, that's the trouble. We flooded it. They probably accept it if it's one or two, just, they kind of go, there will be always 10% of people who know.
Yeah.
But now they must have had sort of 20 or 30%. They were going, well, we can't have this.
Yeah, I mean, they've always up to shenanigans, and you just wonder again who these people are, why they keep coming at you, and it's just like a never-ending battle of the parasites that we've got to fight,
I know. And the sad thing is you can't go back. You can't go back to that life of ignorance, because you see it happening, and you see the money is going off to pay for wars where innocent men, women and children are being killed, and you just go, I don't want to pay for that.
I don't know if you've had Chris Coverdale on, that he talks about putting your money into a trust and saying if you can prove that this tax isn't going to fund war, because war is illegal under the Geneva Act or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is all technically true. So we shouldn't all be paying income tax. People say, "Oh, give money for war children." Well, let's stop paying them.
Yes, no, cut off the supply is the thing we need to do. But yes, I've had Chris on a couple of times, I was going to go down that path with the Inland Revenue, but I've actually gone down a somewhat different path. So I'm trying. That's the problem with me. So independent that people go, well, you should try this, and you go, yeah, I can see the merits of that, but actually I had this little idea. So trying my own thing, taking bits from everybody else, but that's always been my way.
But that's a good thing about doing the channel. Obviously, it's not just for other people. You do learn a lot yourself from these guests, and so
you do become an agony aunt. And I never intended, people will come back and they'll think I'm the expert. And I have to sort of say, say, Richard, I've got this problem. I owe X amount of pounds to the so-and-so, the debt collectors at the door. What should I do? And I think, well, I don't know. But I know various people who you could try. And where I can, I do try to help, but I can't give the legal advice because I haven't studied it like the guests on the show. I've got a broad understanding, but that's about it. And I'm trying my own because I think you've got to embrace it and learn it yourself and experiment and learn from all the pushbacks. And a lot of people want you to do it, for them.
Exactly. That Pete Sovereign will say he can't do it for you, but he can show you how the system works. Then it's up to you what steps you take.
Absolutely.
And you have to do the research into how the system works and learn it for yourself. And you only learn by experience and doing it.
And pick your battles. So do it with small things first. Council tax probably not the first thing to do it with.
Yeah.
But some. I mean, it's amazing because I'll get these emails and people are saying I'm not paying all the utility bills or the council tax. I'm not paying my Inland Revenue bill or not submitting. And you think, oh my God, you've declared war in a big way. It's not going to end well, is it? Whereas you need to build up all those bits of experience so that you win the battle, you win the war by lots of little battles. And sometimes you have to sacrifice. So you might go, do you know what? I've got to a point now where this particular thing, let's say, is with the council or with the electric bill, it's racked up a bit. I'll just pay that now, get that out the way. It doesn't mean to say I'm not going to challenge them again in the future, but I'll just get them off my back because I want to work over here and deal with that one. And because it's like a chess game, isn't it? Sometimes you sacrifice a pawn or a bishop or a horse or whatever, because the bigger game is you're coming around the side, they can't see you.
This is true. It's just difficult to pay them when you know they're criminals in action committing fraud on every level. I suppose on one level, I have to sort of satisfy myself with, well, it's all their money anyway. It's not my money. It's all printed on there and it's all worthless. So even though I'd rather not give it to them, but it's all, they just create this money out of thin air. Yep, there's lots more we can talk about, but I said we'd do an hour. We just went over that.
Blimey, it went really quickly.
By a good 10 minutes there. But I've really enjoyed having you on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
No worries. You were on Resistance GB last night, I believe.
Yes, that's it.
So I'll check that one out, and I'll look forward to watching your future interviews.
Thank you so much, Billy. Look after yourself and more power to you.
Will do. Thanks very much for yourself and everyone for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Billy Watson TV. Cheers the now.
Enjoying the fun, Billy Watson got TV. Billy Watson TV. Come join the fun. Enjoying the fun, Billy Watson got TV.